Okay, hey everybody. Welcome to Starving Artists. I'm your host, Bijan Kodavandi, and welcome to episode 3. Woo!
3 is a good number.
3 is a good number, right? Starving Artists is a podcast about creatives risking it all to chase big dreams, my favorite type of human. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Some would call him my arch nemesis, but I just call him my friend, John Anthony. Hi. John Anthony is originally from South Salem, New York. He spent 7 years living in New York City and moved to Los Angeles 3 years ago. Welcome to Starving Artist, babes.
Thank you. Wow, you really did your research for that one.
I really did. I called your publicist. Well, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here.
Me too.
Do you know that you're my first homosexual guest?
That's a shame. Shame on you, Bijan.
I know.
What's that about?
Well, I try to limit that, just like
Your gay-to-gay interaction.
Yes, in life, on the pod. I'm just kidding. You identify mostly as a writer, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so tell me
Even though
about.
you try and push me to label myself as a content creator.
I know. When I was doing my questions, I was like, Bijan, he's not a content creator fully. So talk to me a little bit about how you identify artistically, and we'll start there.
Yeah, I am a writer. Although I did just recently change my Instagram label from artist to playwright.
Oh my God, so Shakespeare?
Because I mostly write plays.
Okay.
But I also write essays and graphic novels.
Okay.
That's my main circuit.
Yes. Okay, and I have one of your graphic novels.
You do. You were a kind purchaser.
I know. I should have brought that downstairs. The start of your writing, the passion. What's the origin of that?
I don't know. I always loved writing.
Okay.
And even as a kid, I remember when I would go on trips. I forget which one was the first trip that this started, but I would have a vacation journal.
Okay.
And would document my experience on the trip. So I've always been in touch with my internal thoughts and writing the act of writing them down. And then I went to college for acting, actually.
Yes. At
NYU.
NYU, baby. I did not get into NYU.
That's okay.
Yeah.
On my podcast, I have a podcast.
He has a podcast too.
On my podcast, Horny for Love, we intentionally don't say NYU. It's just
Why?
It's just a joke. It's just a running joke. We say the infamous unnamed institution where we studied acting in New York.
That's even more pretentious than just saying NYU.
It's just a fun thing because NYU is such a eye roll, you know.
I love it. You know me. I'm all for the eye roll type. I love it.
So I studied acting there, and then while I was at acting school, at NYU, you have to take a lot of academic classes too. So your acting program, you're in school all 5 days of the week. 3 days of the week are you're at acting school all day, and then the other 2 days you have academic classes. So we still had to take tests and write papers and all of that stuff.
Gross.
So it was kind of a lot, but there were opportunities to take classes for writing, so I did take really cool classes for writing, and kind of just decided towards the end of school that writing was going to be my primary focus after school, because I was also simultaneously coming out and felt that trying to be an actor at that time too, this was years ago, was less gay friendly for sure, and there were less gay roles, and walking into an audition room and being able to present gay and be authentic felt it would be a hindrance to having a successful career as an actor. And I didn't want to sacrifice self-actualization and embracing my identity, and I felt I'd have a much more satisfying time doing that as a writer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I always wondered how your like gay identity informs your creativity, and it seems like you went more the writing route back then because of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my gay identity definitely informs my creative self.
See, that's interesting, and I feel like this is why I wish, like, I don't know, I just feel like that's such a thing for me in my life that, or I guess gay men in general, how much like our gay identities inform everything that we do, and we actually have to consider that. Was there ever an experience in New York that, you know, kind of taught you like, maybe I have to, you know, be a certain way as it pertains to like your writing?
As writing or as acting?
Well, like both. I mean, was there like an educational experience or like an experience that sticks out to you?
I mean, just like being in acting school in general, the acting school, so NYU's like subdivided their undergrad acting program into different studios, and you like have every studio has its own specialization. And my studio was like founded by a like historically like very straight male, like heteronormative patriarchal like playwright.
Okay.
So it was a very like straight centric environment.
Okay.
So it was not like this like free and loose, like find yourself, be free in your body kind of place.
Okay.
So I mean, my whole experience there was very like reinforcing the ideas that I had that if I were to come out, I would not be a successful actor.
Okay.
Which is ironic because being in touch with like who you are and your like raw authentic self is what will make you a good actor. So it was like kind of like a catch-22. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Tell me if you identify with this. Like, do you think that being gay and like the trials and tribulations of that is a source of all of your kind of like fearlessness in your art today? Like, yeah.
I mean, I think like some people have like a lot of internalized homophobia and like try and be like, gay is not the first thing about me. And I'm like, sure, like I'm a whole person with multifaceted, and there's so many things about my life that have shaped who I am, but like being gay is like the foundation. Because and maybe it would be different like in a different world, in a different society, but our society was very like being gay is bad. So if you know that you're gay, like you have to grapple with something very serious like very early on. And like it limited me completely like when I was younger, because I was very gay as a child.
Same.
Like stereotypically, like loved the Wizard of Oz, loved the Golden Girls, loved Disney princesses, loved dolls. Like that was me. So I learned very early on. I didn't know that at the time that like, I just knew I liked those things. I didn't know that I was gay. But I knew that liking those things meant that I was different, and I knew that a lot of people would think that that was bad, and I would feel a lot of shame and embarrassment for liking those things or being that way. So that's like the foundation of my whole world as a child. So how could it not like completely shape me and like therefore shape my art?
Right. And like the way I see like you and the things you do, because like I've seen you do stand-up, not like in person, but I know that you've done stand-up. You've written a book. You've done AIDS Life Cycle, where you cycled like over 500 miles. After me. Thank you very much. Thank you. And you have a podcast. And to me, like I see that and I identify with that a lot, because it's kind of like the things you've done take a lot of courage and a lot of bravery and a lot of organization. And I kind of feel like when you're used to being maybe like ostracized or like seen as weak, you kind of grow up to be very forceful in the way you see the world and in your ventures. And would you say that like it's made you a stronger person in terms of that?
At the end of the day, yeah, but I think like the courage and bravery is more like newfound within like the past 5 years, not like my whole life. You know, like I think I always had that like spark in me, but I had to like get over all of my shit first. Like all the shame of everything, my identity, and like then once you know, there's so many steps to it. Once you like finally are able to embrace your identity, then you have to like discover it.
Yeah.
And like how to embody it and who you really are. And I think that like I am sometimes still, but used to be like very afraid of things. So like the best antidote to that is to just like do things.
Yes. So like, when you meet another creative, and because like in my eyes, the way I assess you, like you're a go-getter, like you're going to do the thing. You're someone that executes.
Yeah, I identify.
Yes. Okay.
More than a content creator.
Right. I definitely feel like you're someone that executes on their goals. Does it ever frustrate you because we're always, you know, meeting other creatives. Does that ever frustrate you when you're talking to someone who's talking about their goals, but they're not executing on them?
Only if we're like in a partnership together.
Okay.
Like if we're like trying to create something together and they're like not able to execute, then yeah, that would be really frustrating. I think like as I get older, if I were to talk to people who like are that way, that like don't seem to be able to execute, it doesn't like frustrate me. It's more of just like in my mind, like, okay, we don't align on that.
Yeah. Okay.
And it just kind of like turns me off.
Right. Yeah, I used to be way more neutral, but now that I like have my podcast and I'm doing social media stuff, I'm starting to classify people in Los Angeles in different buckets, and I'm noticing as I'm getting older now, you know, people, they are either in like they execute on their ideas, they're open to failure, they're open to collaborations, and then you meet these other class of people in LA that they're still in that fear phase, and they're not executing, and they're questioning everything if you ask them to collaborate. And like, to me, I think that's a detriment to people in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And if you're young in LA, like pick your crowd because they're all different.
Yeah.
You know, you'll have some friends that just like to ideate and they like to talk about what they want to do. But then you're going to meet another type of friend. They're out there, they're failing, they're collaborating, they're creating. And I think that's an important, you know, thing for people in the city to recognize.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredibly hard to like try and make a career out of a creative identity.
Yeah.
Like you have to really try or do for a while and like for a really long time before it will ever like, you know, actually pay off monetarily if that's what you're going for.
Yeah.
Not that I think like the essence of all of my creation is so that I can make money. I do it because that's just like who I am. Like I can't not write. Like in my free time, I choose to write, you know, because I just, it's an innate thing. Of course I want it to make me money, like, because we live in a capitalist world and society that forces you to have to make money somehow to survive. And I would rather that be from my creative pursuits than anything else. So in order to do that, like you really have to like go for it.
Right. Well, I think that's something that I'm really passionate about too, is kind of just recognizing as an artist, as a creative, that, you know, my ability to produce work is correlated to my ability to make a living one day. You know, we're both in the service industry, and it's like there's an urgency to develop my creative skills so that I can leave that one day.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's lost on a lot of creatives. So kind of wanted to talk about how we balance like commercial viability with authentic creativity, because it's hard for artists. Like if you really identify as an artist, there's something gross about the prospect of making money off art.
Yeah.
You know, but I do think if you live in Los Angeles, there's a culture of excess, and it's gonna influence you. You're gonna feel kind of a little out of place if you're here for years and years and years and you're not making money on your art, I feel.
I think the most important word you said was urgency, because that's what I feel. Like I feel an urgency every day. Like I, in a perfect world, and this is my like not crazy brain, but this is like my like overachiever brain, and there's also a balance that you have to work on too. Like basically what I'm trying to say is, like, in my mind I'm like, I want to write for as much as possible every day. So like, you know, if we have work at night, like getting up as early as I can, which is hard when we work really late, but
Right.
get up as early as I can. And like, I write at a cafe. Like
Okay.
I always write outside of the house. It's just like how I do it. And like getting there and spending as many hours as I can there. And my ideal life, like I could do that every day. But also there's like burnout, and you can't simply like write every day,
Right.
like at least not the same thing. And you need to give your mind a break, because a lot about writing is actually you thinking about the thing you're working on, not you actively like typing, because that's where you're formulating ideas. That's where you're like refining, like in your head. Like you don't have to be like actively writing. Like I'll be at work and I'll be thinking about like the play I'm working on, and like just like trying to solve the puzzle in my head, not like on purpose, it just happens. And that counts as work too. But you were asking something about money?
Yeah, I was kind of asking, like, how do you personally balance, you know, wanting to like stay true to like
Your artistry?
but also balancing like commercial viability?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important if you do actually want to make a living off of it one day.
Right.
And I think that sometimes it's good. Like, plays are different because you never get rich from making a play anyway. So you can kind of be more daring and like true to yourself, I guess. And that's why I love playwriting, because you can kind of just do like anything, and be really bold. With my graphic novels, like that's like my most like commercial viability that I see like in the near future. Just because I think that format is very like commercial. There's a lot of like media that could be made from a graphic novel. And I've actually like been having to consider that a lot lately, because I've been pitching like my next book, and for a while with an agent, and getting feedback about my artistic style.
Okay.
And it's like so different for people, that they were like having a hard time like wanting to buy it, commercial viability, because a lot about commercial viability isn't about like whether your art is good or not, or cool or whatever. It's about, is there like an example they can point to in the market that's sold really well, because the people, like the publishers, the editors that are buying it are going to have to answer to their like marketing team, and they're going to have to market this, and how are they, and they only have so much money to spend on it. So like how big of a risk is it going to be, and are they willing to like factor that in financially, you know,
Right.
like all of these pieces of the puzzle, which could feel like really sad to the artist of like, oh my God, like I'll never be seen, you know? But I just like to think of it as like, okay, so what tweaks can I make to make it more commercial? Because at the end of the day, this is like one of my first play, a theme in one of my first plays actually. Like, is it worth it to quote unquote sacrifice my like vision to gain an audience? But then the flip side is, well, if you don't have an audience, then what does it matter if you have a vision at all?
Right.
It doesn't matter what your art looks like, period, because no one's looking at it.
Right.
So how do you gain an audience while still staying as true to yourself as possible, but also like being commercially marketable? So I have made tweaks to my art for that pitch, and I actually really like the way it looks now.
Okay.
It's just like colored very differently than it was before. And I think it does make it look more commercial, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Well, I think another thing that like enhances like your commercial viability is having a social media presence. Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think it's really smart of you as a writer to have your podcast, which you've been gaining traction with.
Slowly.
But as we know in social media, growth is exponential after a certain point. I mean, once you hit, I mean, it takes a while, but as long as you have that body of work, even if you hit 2 years later, like that's the kindling that will set the blaze, right? And I think it's really smart these days, like to build that audience, right? Familiarize the public with your personality, and then you create the product and you release it to that audience. Do you, strategically speaking, has your podcast been aimed at that goal about kind of introducing yourself to the public, gaining a slight following, and then releasing your books or your literature?
I think, like, at first we just kind of did it for fun. So we're on our second season.
Okay.
The first season, me and my one of my best friends, Andrea, she's an actor in LA. Our podcast is called Horny for Love, and it's about sex and dating, but was like really about like both of us having this desire to fall in love, like in a really big, like true love way.
Two reformed prudes.
Yeah, reclaiming our sexuality. And so we would talk about that, and we just like the first season we were just like throwing shit at the wall. We were just like, whatever, like we're just gonna do this. Like, not much intention behind it besides like just seeing what happens.
Which is a very important part of starting a project.
Yeah.
That phase of just throwing things at the
let's
wall.
Just see what this is like.
Yeah, a bunch of nothingness turns into something.
Yeah, and for the first season we had basically no guests. Like here and there we had some guests, but it was mostly just us talking about ourselves, which was really hard to do every week.
Sounds amazing to me.
And we actually, like, after we finished that, like, had a lot of like frank conversations. We weren't sure whether we were going to continue doing it because like Andrea was doing like a lot of the legwork, like making videos. She was the one like editing the podcast, and we tried to do very minimal editing. Like if we knew we said something we were going to want to cut, we would just like cut in the moment and like go back.
Yeah.
And then she started making like the little videos and stuff, and so she just felt like the workload was uneven, and I was struggling because like we know I'm a writer, and I like really, my free time is everything to me, and like it's really hard for me to sacrifice my free time for anything other than writing, and that includes like doing the podcast or like doing work for the podcast. So I was like, I don't know how much I can like give to this and feel like okay about it. So then we took a break for a while, and then we were like missing it.
Right.
We were like, we want to do it still.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, if we're going to do it again, like what do we want to be different about it? And we were like, okay, well, if we want to do it again, like we don't want it to just like be a hobby forever. Like we don't need like a hobby.
Right.
So what can we like gain from this? And we wanted to see if we could expand our audience, so we were like, let's focus on having like a lot of guests this season, and we wanted to meet a lot of comedians because we're both like, she's an actor, I'm a writer, but we both like comedy, and the cool like indie comedy scene in LA, like it's cool to be a part of it because those people end up writing for TV and like being on TV, and that's what we want to do. So it was like trying to expand our social network as well, and that's when we like took real photos and hired someone to make a logo, and so it like looked different, and so everything was done with much more intention.
Yes.
And we backlogged a bunch of episodes before we like released the season so that we could like not have to record every week of our lives and feel that pressure. We like run out since, so now we do have that kind of like, okay, as long as this season's going, we have to like record every week if we wanted to release an episode every week.
That's me.
So yeah. Which I feel like if you're not a culture podcast, like it behooves you to like backlog episodes because you're not talking about like current events.
Right.
And then, yeah, we just like, she still made those videos and just like has been posting on TikTok like incessantly.
Yes.
And eventually we started to get some traction on some videos.
I mean, and I think like one of the really important things like about the podcast and like filming every week is like, I think as a creative, like you have to be constantly working on something. You have to be producing something at all times, like unfortunately, because it like does this it has a psychological impact, and it builds momentum, and you feel like an artist. If you're not creating art, or if you're not creating content or whatever, or if you're not writing, it's hard to identify as a writer or as whatever it may be. And there's this great psychological impact that high productivity has.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of, not what a traditional artist would say, but you kind of do have to think in those like pragmatic terms sometimes. So how do you deal with, say in your writing, if you have writer's block or you're lacking inspiration, how do you deal with that?
I was having a hard time with this play I'm working on right now, like having kind of like writer's block in the sense of like not being able to figure out how to like solve the play.
Right.
And I've been trying to figure, like I can still do it here, but in New York it was a little easier in terms of like, I would just be like, okay, I'm just going to go to a museum today and just like look at art. Because I really like museums and have been inspired by art before to like influence my plays and things. So that's always a good thing, like taking a brain break, like stop like forcing yourself to like produce and like refill. You have to be inspired also. Like it's really hard to just like keep your head down all the time and just like force stuff out. So I think like taking a brain break and going to consume some art, and that doesn't have to be a museum. You can like watch a movie or that you've been really wanting to see or whatever, like listen to an album, like go to a walk and listen to an album. Walking really helps me, which is harder to do here. Like in New York, I would like purposely go to a cafe in a different neighborhood that I could walk to, like probably like a 30-minute walk. And that was like part of my ritual. And it was like, the walk was part of my creative process. It's just time to like let your thoughts wander. Right. Which is really important. Like you have to like, you know, be in touch with your imagination. And
do you spend a lot of time alone?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Especially now that I live alone.
Oh, that's right.
I spend a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
Sometimes too much time alone.
Me too.
Yeah.
Is that a gay thing?
I don't know. I think it's also a creative thing.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
That did.
I feel like I didn't answer part of your other question.
I think you did. So let's kind of talk about you more personally and like who you are. So we know what you do, we know how you do it, but let's talk about like the why. And so you're close to your parents, I believe?
Yeah.
Okay. Who are you more like? Are you like your mom more, or are you more like your dad?
Oh my God. I really think I have aspects of both of them in me, as we all do.
Right.
I think, this is hard to say. I don't know, because I try and answer this question a lot, and sometimes I feel like I'm totally like one, and then there are other times I feel like totally like the other.
Yeah.
Like my dad is very like sensitive and genuine and humorous.
Okay.
And so those aspects of myself I feel like aligned with him, like my sense of humor, like my jovial spirit. And then my mom is more like my kind of like feistier side, I guess.
Oh, snap. So he's like his mom.
And also like my sense of worrying and
anxiety.
the way my thoughts turn about my head is probably more like my mom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in your family that like was your hero, or like was like a role model to you?
I mean, so many. I have and had a very close relationship with all four of my grandparents.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Which I grew up as like that's normal, but like,
because you're Italian, right?
I'm half Italian and half Greek.
Sorry for that.
No, I
called the city. I told them not to street.
On our podcast,
but apparently.
On our podcast, we always say like, "Oh, you're in the room with us,"
right?
When there's like some weird sound happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, I guess you're just in the room.
You're here.
Yeah, I grew up very close to my grandparents.
Oh.
Yeah.
Family oriented, generally.
Very. Yeah.
Italian.
Half Italian, half Greek.
Sorry, I kind of got
distracted by the garbage truck. And all of my family like lived like close enough, not like walking distance close, but like 30-minute drive close.
Okay. Siblings?
Two.
Sisters?
One.
Okay. So there's two boys.
Two boys.
Okay. Are any of them gay?
Yeah, my brother's gay.
Did I know that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love when there's more than one gay in one family.
There's more than one gay.
Oh, love that.
So I think like I looked up to my grandparents a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think like, so where do you get this spirit of like, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna be a little bit, fearless. Like, where do you get that from?
I don't know. Like, I don't really know. I just like, I'm so stubborn.
Stubborn. That is my thing too.
People call me that sometimes. And
isn't it amazing to be stubborn when it comes to like your passion?
you have to be. I really believe I'll be successful. Like that. You have to if you're going to really do it. And I think I had a harder time believing that when I was like thinking of pursuing acting, because I feel like I just didn't want it as much as I want to be a writer.
Okay.
And I used to be conscious of the fact that like that was the thing that would hold me back, not like anything else. Like there will be many obstacles and hurdles for sure, but the thing that will hold me back will be the way I think about myself. And so yeah, you have to think that you're good.
Yes.
And you have to be able to back it up too.
Right.
Which takes like, craft and time and whatever, maturation. But I think I can back it up.
Yes.
And I feel confident about that.
Yeah. I think self-belief really like shows on a person. And I do think one of the greatest gifts many gays have been gifted is this self-belief.
Sometimes too much.
Maybe too much. But it's something that I'm so inspired by, and I love to see it in people because it is the number one fuel, I think, to a creative endeavor. Is if you can imagine yourself being, a success in your field, that's half the battle. So, how do you navigate when that leaves you? Like when you're
Start to doubt?
Yeah.
We all doubt.
Yeah.
Doubt's okay. I don't know. I just think like you can't let it shake you.
Right.
Like there are like, and I just recently didn't get into something that I wanted to get into for writing. And I was like, like that sucks. Like, am I really not good enough to get this? Like what else? And I had like people vouching for me, like who knew the people who were like selecting. And I had like the talent and like the work to back it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, still no? Like, you think the missing piece sometimes is like, it's who you know. And I was like, okay, well now I know people and they can help me. And they did help me and I still didn't get it. And it was like, okay, so there's two ways of looking at that you can be really bent out of shape. Like, oh my God, like nothing's going to help me now. Like not even knowing people will help me. Or you could think like, it was never about how good I was all along. Yeah. It's always about all these other things that aren't in my control.
Right. I think that's when like ego is really present. It's like if you're told a no or you fail in some way and that kind of keeps you from going forward, that demonstrates your ego is in the front seat, I think, is in the driver's seat. But you have to, in art, learn how to like interject and like override the ego and have this like kind of macro plan. And that's what motivates me, is just having this larger vision for my life and not taking any no's and being super stubborn and having an immense self-belief. And I honestly attribute a lot of those characteristics to my being gay. Yeah. Personally. Like I was bullied. Were you bullied?
I mean, yeah.
Okay, like memorably bullied or just like kind of bullied?
I was bullied.
Okay, see, I was super bullied.
Okay, I wasn't super bullied.
I was super bullied, and that.
Well, were you gay? Like,
I was effeminate.
I mean, were you like out?
No, I mean it was like it started when I was in first grade, and it didn't let up until I was like a sophomore in high school, and I was one of the only like gay guys in that community, I feel. And I was constantly harassed and constantly in fear and constantly feeling small and weak, and I think that experience is what drives me today to really invest myself in my future and making something of myself. And I think struggle a lot of the time, I mean, as we all know, like is a huge part of artistic expression.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the more I like to share that because I think a lot of people like they overlook their trauma and where that's led them today. But I think it's so good to like leverage all of that as much as possible in art.
Leverage. I think it's just like, well, there's like this toxic trait that some artists have that think like you have to like suffer to like be a good artist, and that just the name starving artist like has a connotation where people believe like, you know, it's like part of my art to like be scraping by and like starving.
Yeah.
I'm not starving, honey. Like,
yes, tell me more.
I'm just like, I'm not gonna starve. Like, I'm not gonna be miserable. I'm still gonna like have the things I want and like fight for them, and I'm not gonna like be literally hungry.
Yeah.
You have to do things like, you know, work in a restaurant sometimes and like work there too much. And whatever, you know, whatever works for you, but like find your way to like, you know, not be starving. But also you don't have to like suffer to be a good artist, I think is like what I'm trying to say. And that like, yeah, you don't need to like purposely like put yourself in a place or like find situations where you will suffer or like undergo trauma so that you'll have something to create about. Like, life is traumatic enough, and like
it is.
And not all artists from trauma. It's just like from like, you know, experiences and things that like shape you. Yeah. Not everything that shapes you that's like is traumatic, but it's still really interesting or like good fodder.
Yeah, I think it's good to leverage our past and not to dwell on our past.
I really like the word leverage.
Well, I wanted to double down on that because I think, you know, this notion of like starving artists and like struggle, you know, you can utilize that in a really, I think, beneficial way. And that's been my personal journey is, you know, seeing my past as like useful. And I think my past has led to a little bit of solitude in my art. And talk to me a little bit about how you deal with loneliness.
Whoa.
Segue.
That came out of left field. Loneliness is hard. I feel like I felt an element of loneliness like forever.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Well, I don't know what it is. Like, what comes first, like the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? But I also think like it's just part of who I am because I'm a writer. Like, writers are observers, and like observers are like watching things. They're not always like being a part of things, you know? So there's like an inherent like loneliness to that aspect of it, you know? And then spending so much time like writing your thoughts and as a way of communicating them instead of like maybe like talking to people.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty social person. So I'm not like just like not saying things.
No, he'll talk to you if you're around.
Yeah, I talk.
He'll talk at you.
But I think like other than that aspect, like I feel like our world is becoming more and more isolationist. Especially after the pandemic, and even though it's like over quotes now, we're still like even more like isolated and more virtual, and that's just like become more part of our society. So I don't like deal with it well, the loneliness. I think especially like gay loneliness is another thing.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I think gay men is what we're talking about specifically. Gay men are very competitive with each other. It's very like looking at people and assessing them for whether or not you're attracted to them as a means of whether or not you want to like commune with them. And if you're basing it off of that means it's like sexual in nature, not like friendly in nature. So it doesn't necessarily lead to like friendship or like community. And like going out to a gay bar is not like, you can be around a bunch of gay people, but you're not really like communing with each other. You're just like looking at each other, assessing. I write a lot about, my essays are all like about this, really, and how unsatisfying that is, and feeling like, how do I meet people? Like, how do I meet potential like lovers, but also how do I meet potential friends that are gay, and like building that community. And I felt very unsatisfied with that for a very long time, like in New York and in LA. But one of the best things that I've done to like remedy that was doing AIDS Life Cycle, which you did.
Yes.
And have made some incredible gay friendships through that that are becoming some of my closest friends, especially my of gay friends. And that's been very healing. So I feel like looking for opportunities like that are not centered around drinking or hooking up, that are around other gay people. And I just went to this like queer writers retreat this summer, which obviously wasn't just gay men, it was like all different people, but we're all like
Love
LGBTQ.
them. Oh, okay.
And that was really cool too, to just like meet people that way. And I feel like that's what I search for in the world, to cure this like loneliness that I feel, because like making friends like that is much more organic and really satisfying. And then also like it's through our friendships and through these communities that we build that we would find like a potential partner, if that's what you're looking for, that will feel satisfying. I just don't see how I would meet someone like that aligns with like my core beliefs, or the odds of meeting someone that aligns with my core beliefs at a club or on an app are far less likely.
Right.
And even if they are there, it's far less likely that I'll know that our core beliefs align, because when we're there, we're not talking about those things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel that. So talk to me a little bit about, I mean, you went to Greece. I forget when.
I did
was
last September.
Last September. Yeah, and I feel
long
like
ago.
I feel like that trip was like amazing for you.
It was.
Yeah, and writing came out of that.
Yeah.
And I love the aesthetic of like your writing on like
Instagram.
On Instagram.
Yeah.
I really like how you market it essentially. I love the font. I love like the kind of the filter over it. And I thought that was a really compelling way to show writing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And because you went on this fabulous trip, and like a true creative, he's like, let me, write about it and then also share that. And I thought you did it really artfully. So talk to me a little bit about that trip, the men, and your writing.
It wasn't my intention going into the trip to like do that.
Okay.
It became as I was like there. But Andrea, my podcast co-host and best friend, who I was on the trip with, was like, because she's a very avid reader, and she's a very avid like consumer of culture.
Okay.
Like she is very aware of the culture, like pop culture, and she just like is always reading books. I love that about her. And she told me about Substack, which I didn't really know about before. But do you know what Substack is?
No.
So it's where I post my full essays, and it is like essentially like a newsletter blog kind of thing where you can get subscribers, and it gets into their emails. And it's not all like essays. It's like some it's like articles, or some it's just like comedians do like fun newsletters or like meme stuff, whatever. You can do whatever you want. And she was on a month-long European trip, so she was like, I'm going to like write all my Substack about it. I was like, oh, I should do a Substack about my trip to Greece.
Yeah.
So while I was there, I always bring like disposable cameras when I go places or have fun events, because I just like film photography, and I'm not like, I don't know about it, so I just do the simple thing.
Yeah.
And while I was there, I was like taking pictures and just like kind of thinking about what I would want to write about. And I didn't know what my like into the essays were going to be until I was like discovering it while I was on my trip.
Yeah.
A lot of it was about like gay loneliness.
I remember reading something.
Something. Because I was on the trip with two straight cis women who I love. But, parading around these Greek islands and feeling like, well, where are all the gay people? Because I would go on like Grindr or whatever to how else am I going to find them on this island?
Yeah.
And there was like barely any, or the ones that were like 30 miles away, which meant like they were on a different island.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. And all the while, like Andrea's like having this like romance with some like Greek man on this island
That she met there? Mm-hmm. Oh, amazing.
and I'm like jealous because I'm like I want that, like, but and feeling like sad because it's just like easier for, I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but it's also easier for like straight people because they're just everywhere.
They're fucking everywhere.
So there's more potential, and I'm like, I don't have potential here on this Greek island. And it all started with like us at this beach, and there was this guy across like the water who we were like, is he looking at us? I feel like he's looking at us, and he looked kind of gay. This beach was like a beach where it's like all kind of cliffs and rocks, and there was like this jumping cliff that everyone was jumping off of.
Yeah.
And I was like scared to jump off of it.
Why?
Because I'm scared of heights.
Oh, okay.
And like it's just scary.
Not your thing.
Not my thing.
Okay.
And Andrea's jumping off of it, and then our friend Mackenzie's jumping off of it, and I'm not jumping off of it. And then this guy and his friend like come over, and they're like in that area, and I'm like, I have to face my fears. Like I have to jump off this cliff, and I have to go talk to this boy. So I jumped off the cliff, and then I talked to the boy. Yes. And that was like the way in. So then the theme kind of was just like, you know, like going for it vibes.
Yes.
And another essay was how I fell in love with this boatman who took us on a boat tour.
Okay.
Never found out if he was gay. And it wasn't until we went to Mykonos,
Which is like
the
gay
gay
central, right?
island,
Yes.
that I was really able to field my oats. Is that what you say?
Something like that.
Something like that. Mm-hmm. So like most of the trip, I was like this longing, yearning, loneliness.
Okay.
And then we got to Mykonos,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, here we go.
Slut vibes.
Yeah, and I went to the gay nude beach.
Ooh.
Have you ever been to a nude beach before?
I have.
A gay nude beach?
I have.
Okay.
It's next level.
Next level fun.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people think like it's just like raunchy,
Yeah.
but like for the most part it's not. Like it's just people being naked together.
Yeah.
And then there are like the areas you go to like have fun if you choose to.
Right.
But it's not like inherently like pornographic.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. And I'm sure in Europe it's even less.
Yeah, because it's just like normal.
Right.
So I went there and I was like determined to cruise.
Okay.
Because because again, like it is something that I wasn't used to or like makes me uncomfortable or scares me. But also like something I'm like holding myself back from experiencing for what? Like for fears, you know? Mm-hmm. Why are all these like imagined bad things going to happen if you go cruise? Like I'm telling myself this. And so I was like, okay, just go. Just do it. Let's see what happens. And I did. Mm-hmm. And I wrote about, all the stuff I'm telling you about is stuff I like wrote about.
Right.
And then just, like hooking up with other guys on that island. And it was just funny. Like the trip was interesting to me artistically, like story wise, because it was like, for most of it was this huge gap of like, not feeling surrounded by gay people, not feeling seen, not feeling like I'm able to go after romance or lust in the way that like my straight like friends are able to so freely on these islands, and missing that and wanting it. And then finally getting to Mykonos and being like oversaturated by it, and then leading to like other issues of like, and one of my favorite things I wrote was like something from the Mykonos portion.
Okay.
Just about like how like earlier in the trip I had wanted to be surrounded by gay men, and now that I was, it it hurt more when I wasn't around one every second, because it's like now the excuse of them not being there isn't here. Like it's something else. It's they don't like me, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it may be. And that like thought process we go through, and very similar to like if you were to go to a gay club alone, which I write about that a lot too. Like my experiences of, it sucks, when you don't feel like you have a community of gay friends around you to go out with, and then it's like, well, do I go out alone and have to like endure the like awkwardness and vulnerability of being in a gay bar alone?
Yeah.
Or do I just not go? And then like not have any experiences. And I think like you have to just like fight to have the experiences, and sometimes it's awkward and uncomfortable, and maybe you go there for an hour and you feel awkward and then you leave, and maybe the next time it's better. And so I was feeling that on this trip because I didn't have like gay friends there.
Yeah.
It's like you can bring your girlfriends out, but like it's just not the vibe always.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
Yeah.
So that became like what launched my Substack, which I still like write periodically for. And like I took all these beautiful pictures in Greece and I was like, this is what I want my aesthetic to be like. And one day when I write like a memoir, like this is the vibe. Like this is, you also have to think like, so now I'm talking about the visual presentation on Instagram. Because that's how people are going to be consuming my work mostly right now, is like my network of friends are the only people who are going to like want to read it right now. I'm not at the stranger level yet. Just getting there. But at the time, definitely not. And we're an image-based like culture.
Yes, we are.
And so I was like, well, if I want people to read my stuff, I have to have like compelling images to go with it. And so that's what I would do.
Which is so smart as a writer to do.
Yeah, and I do like images too, and I like taking pictures. It's like, it's another like way in to see how I observe things.
Yeah.
Like I'm taking these pictures and I'm writing these words.
Yeah.
So it's like you're seeing everything through my mind. And just thinking about like, how do I match the tone of like what I'm writing? Or how do I match the aesthetic to the tone of what I'm writing?
Yeah, that's hard. That's where creativity really comes.
Well, that's why that's like where it comes from. Like you have to be specific and intentional in like when you're creating things, and like visually too. I'm like, just the visual presentation of this is going to alert people to the tone of my essays before they read anything.
Yes.
And they'll know like what they're getting into.
Yes. That is like the part that I really enjoy, is kind of, is the packaging and the messaging behind how you package anything digitally. Because there's like stories within stories, and like, yeah, I think yours, those posts kind of had like this vintage feel, kind of like this nostalgic feel. And I thought that was very carefully chosen, and I think it worked really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So talk to me a little bit about the future.
Ooh.
Yes, and
Hold on, let me get my crystal ball.
yeah, get it. No, and talk to me a little bit about what you want for yourself, where you see yourself, and I'll get a little bit more specific, but I think a huge part of making it as an artist is about visualization, and we're still in the phase of our lives where we're building and we're toiling, and a lot of visualization is required. So where do you see yourself? What does success look like for you as a writer? Like, describe your life idealistically in like 20 years.
In 20 years? Wow.
Yeah, we'll start there.
I better have accomplished a lot in 20 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, that's the time frame I'm curious at. Like, what does your life look like? You've already mentioned a memoir.
Yeah.
Yes. What does that look like?
Well, visualizing, I think, is very important.
It is.
I've been doing it forever because it's like, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And I would like always imagine myself like, this is gonna sound funny because of what we're doing right now, like sitting somewhere and talking about my work.
Yes.
As a sign of success.
Yes.
Like 92nd Street Y vibes, where like there's an interviewer and they're asking me questions about my process and my work and my art and why. And like that's what success like looks like in my mind's eye.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like what I think of and visualize. Or that means like going on like a book tour and like being able to talk about my work and my creative process as a sign of success. So in 20 years, I hope to have accomplished a lot of the things I'm visualizing.
Are you gonna live in LA?
No.
New York? Greece?
Bi-coastal between New York and Greece.
Probably.
I imagine I'll live in New York in 20 years. I don't know like when I'll get back there just yet. I'm still Cali for now. But I want to have like multiple plays running. Like in 20 years, on this day in 20 years, like I'll have like 2 plays running, maybe like in New York, both in New York, maybe one somewhere else. I don't know. At like reputable, successful theaters. I'll have I'll have made my second graphic novel out definitely at that point.
Definitely.
It'll have been turned into an animated series or TV show, of course, which will lead to opportunities for me to write for film and TV. And hopefully I'll have, in 20 years, like definitely my first memoir will be published and done.
Okay.
So maybe I'll be on to my second in 20 years.
Okay. And when you say memoir, is that like an autobiography?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like memoir is like a specific point in life.
Oh, okay, got it.
Like but yes, autobiography.
Okay.
Family. Yeah, and I guess like in 20 years, I hope that I will be. You gotta speak like that to yourself. Talking about my art and my body of work.
Yes.
Because it will be a body of work. It is already, but in 20 years, like, you just have to think of like the rate you're moving now. Like, even if it just stays the same, like I'll have accomplished a lot in 20 years.
Yes. Well, it's funny you mentioned that, like at the top of that, about being interviewed and talking about your work. I think that was a subconscious motivation of my podcast, is I really love giving somebody the opportunity to talk about their art as if they were famous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I've always been...
It's good practice.
It is. It really is. I mean, this is like visualization, but like a little bit more than that. We're doing it. And my last guest kind of mentioned that as well. You know, she's always wanted to be on a podcast and talk about her work. And I get such fulfillment out of doing that. And I think the interview format is amazing for artists because, you know, we should be putting ourselves in those situations, you know? And I was just curious, just on a personal level, I was like, okay, so this guy is doing so much. I'm very curious to know like what he's striving for, what that, you know, that looks like. You know, something that's so interesting that was missing from that description.
What?
Was
my podcast?
No. Was like, I guess
I don't think I'll be doing the podcast in 20 years.
No, I guess I was gonna ask like where love falls in.
Well, I thought you wanted it to be career focused.
Maybe I was leading to that, yeah. But so yeah, I mean,
I hope that I'm married.
Okay.
In 20 years.
In 20 years.
I would like it in like 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God. Okay, so that's kind of how you see. I think that so many people don't have that.
You have to have that. What else are you working towards? Like, I'm not like an amorphous person. Like, like you have to have these goals and these visions. I like saying visions because it feels like a vision to me. Like I envision this happening, and I don't know like the circumstance or when or why or how, but I just know that like as I continue on this path, I'll be closer to like that vision becoming a reality. And maybe it'll look. It will look different than what you're imagining because it always does. But yeah, how else are you supposed to keep going?
What do you fear in terms of your future?
I mean, when you're like in your like self-doubt bouts, you feel like it won't happen, or you fear that it won't happen. But to be honest, I don't like fear that much, because I'm so stubborn. I just I believe it will, and it's more than just believing because like I do put in the work like every day, and even if you don't believe and you're doing something every day that you like put a lot of care and time into, and you get better, and they used to tell us in acting school, like acting focused, like every year you have to look back at that year and see like, did I make any progress? Have I made even a little progress? And if you did, that's good, and just like keep doing that, and it'll like keep piling on top of each other. And I feel very like much that I see that like within my life in terms of writing. Yeah, I see the progress, I see the growth. I am like getting better every year. I'm getting more opportunities every year, and so that's why I don't fear that it won't happen. I believe it will. I guess I fear like being misunderstood, or I fear being misunderstood, or I fear more like I won't be married in 20 years. I won't meet like someone that I want to share my life with.
Okay, so let me take that a step further. What do people misunderstand about John Anthony today? I think a lot of people don't like
see the why for me sometimes. Not necessarily creatively. I feel like as a person, I'm very stubborn. I'm sarcastic. But that's all just surface. Like, that's not like, you know, yeah, I'm sarcastic, I'm witty, like, I'm loud, unabashed sometimes. But that's all surface stuff. Like, the fuel for that, like, surface fire comes from real, like, beliefs and values and aspirations. And I mean, if I'm not like sitting down getting to know someone, like, they're not going to know those things about me, because I don't just like talk about those things.
Yeah.
I walk around like talking about those things.
Yeah.
Talking about them with you now because you're asking me. So yeah, I think people misunderstand that about me.
Do you ever want to be more forthcoming with that side of yourself?
Yeah, that's why I like have my art, and that's why I want to talk about my art, because it's like, I want you to know the why. Yeah. Like, yeah, I want you to like experience the art and like enjoy it and have your own questions and wonderings, and I don't want to like squash like any like people's like ruminations or like wonderings or ideas about my art. So you don't want to like talk about it right away. But that's why in 20 years they'll have had plenty of time to consume it. So it'll be a good time to be like, so let me tell you why I made this, you know?
Yes.
Because it's all part of the story, and all of it like intertwines.
Yeah. Do you know who Gore Vidal is?
Yeah.
You do? I think I saw that you posted something.
I did post a quote from his.
Okay,
It's in my new, well, not my new, it's in one of my plays.
Do you remember what the quote was?
Yeah, it was about a production of Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, and about, I just like lost the name, Marlon Brando.
Okay.
And I was about to like not say, but like my mind was thinking Stanley Tucci for some reason, which is like not at all the same person. What was it? It was like in whatever year the play premiered, like when Marlon Brando stepped on stage in like a torn, sweaty T-shirt, there was an earthquake.
That's right. That's right. This is why I'm asking you about Gore Vidal, because I thought you had posted something.
Yeah.
He is, I mean, I don't read that much, unless I'm very interested in a topic, but I remember in college I would read Gore Vidal, and I loved him do you know about Gore Vidal?
Only a little.
A little bit. So he was gay. Well, I don't think he ever came out as gay.
He didn't, I don't think, but he was gay.
Yeah, he was totally a homo. Like, everything about him.
I mean, that quote's very gay.
Right.
Why would it be an earthquake to see Marlon Brando in a torn, sweaty T-shirt?
Right. Exactly. And, you know, one of his first books was, you know, I forget what it was. It was one of his big books was about it was like a gay character. But the thing I love about Gore Vidal was, I mean, his writing is just so unapologetic. Like the things he says, he is such a critic of American culture, and he's very hard on, you know, institutions, and his writing is so smart and sharp, and, you know, just pretty much having I just see him with his middle finger in the air while he's like typing. Like, that's how Gore Vidal was. I'm curious to know. I know I loved him as a writer. Who is someone that you really look up to in the writing industry?
Well, Gore Vidal's long gone.
I know he's dead.
Yeah, I love Tennessee Williams, though. That's one of my favorite playwrights. And I'm actually reading this really long biography about him, which is so fascinating, actually, because it's like talking a lot about the why and the how, like, his plays became successful, and like, you know, also telling us about his personal life and just like the inner workings behind the scenes and the producers and all of these things that had to happen and the dramas and whatever. And I'm finding it like super fascinating. So I love his work. His plays inspire some of my plays. And then like prose wise, I read this book a few years ago called How to Write an Autobiographical Memoir or something. Ooh. Oh my God, I think that's what it's called. I'm so sorry if it's not. by Alexander Chi, who's gay.
Love that.
And it's a memoir about him in like, I guess, early 20s to, I don't know how far it goes. Mostly like his early 20s to maybe like mid to late 30s. About his like life living in New York and living in San Francisco and like trying to become a writer and being like a cater waiter and like, you know, his relationships and all of that stuff that I just found so beautiful. And it's still resonant to me now, because I'm still in a similar place in life. But when I read it a few years ago, was even like less far along in terms of like having product. It was mostly vision at that point. And just feeling so like seen by that book and feeling like this is how I feel, and like believing like, or just like reading that and being like, I can't wait to like write my version of that one day. And after like my success, you know, being able to point to the time in my life when I wasn't like there yet.
Yes.
And also he just writes really beautifully. And it is an inspiration for sure in terms of how I write like my essays.
What do you think about Ernest Hemingway?
I've never read Ernest Hemingway.
So it's funny because I recently... Sorry about it. Well, personally speaking, apparently he was like...
Not out of protest or anything, I just haven't.
Apparently he was like not like a great guy.
Oh,
like,
okay, so maybe out of protest.
Yeah, like apparently, I mean, he was obviously a historic writer, but I just saw this video on Hemingway and he was very, very troubled. He killed himself. So did his father. 6 people in like his like 2 generations, like... killed themselves.
That's dark.
Anyway, sorry. But I was here. I was like, I wonder if he's going to say Hemingway is his hero.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
But see, that's the funny thing about like...
Focus on gay people first. Well, when I left college, and I was like really going to become a writer, or like really like focus on that, all I wanted to do was consume things written by gay people, because I spent my whole life not consuming things created by gay people. And as a gay person, I'm like, well, I want to like hear the world through people like me, not like spending more time hearing it through others. And I think it's important, not that like if you're gay your inspirations have to be gay, like of course not, but I think it's important to like spend time seeing what they've done before you.
Absolutely.
And, like, respecting it and being inspired by it and letting it shape you, because it's kind of weird if we let like only stuff made by straight people shape us. I think that I'm really entering... I think AIDS Life Cycle was my genuine attempt to, you know, be around gay culture more, because I feel like I've purposefully distanced myself from it. I feel like when I'm in a group of straight people, I feel like I'm just another person. When I'm around a lot of gay guys, I feel very judged. I feel very like I have to be perfect. I feel like just not... Oddly enough, I feel like there's more attention on me. And when I'm around straight people, I feel like more anonymous and like I could just be myself. But when it comes to like the content that I consume as well, I think I need to lean into gay culture a little bit more, and because I feel like an other all the time, and it's almost like that internalized homophobia, you know, that like makes us feel that way. For sure. I also think like it depends what kind of gay environments you're in, because like I was saying before, like there's a lot of the most readily available gay environments we have, which are I guess bars and stuff, is like a space where you're going to be judged. And people's eyes are like darting around. I don't like those environments. Like I don't enjoy that very much.
No, I don't either.
I go there because I'm like hoping I'll meet people, but very rarely do I actually meet someone new. Right.
Well, I'll just say I do really appreciate like talking about this whole... I feel like gayness has been a theme throughout this conversation.
For sure.
Forgive me. I don't always talk about that as it pertains to art, so I've actually really enjoyed that.
Yeah, of course.
And just to finish things off, what is a piece of advice that you would give younger John Anthony when he just arrived here in LA?
To LA?
Yes.
That was only 3 years ago.
Oh, that's right. Okay, how about just younger John Anthony?
Okay.
What is a piece of advice you would give him?
I mean, I definitely like wish that I embraced myself sooner. So anything I could say to like my younger self to like encourage that along, I would say that.
Okay.
Yeah, because the biggest thing holding you back would be yourself. And I don't know if I still, but I think I've kind of gotten past that at this point. Like the biggest thing holding you back is yourself. Although I feel like that applies to like all humans. Not to like discount external forces that might be holding someone back, but oftentimes or a lot of the times we have great internal struggles that we're all dealing with. Mine happened to be with my sexuality. And it did hold me back for a really long time, and I'm still dealing with the repercussions. So I would say, yeah, like embrace yourself sooner for sure. Go for it, King.
Yes, go for it, King. I love that. Okay, well, thanks, babe.
Of course, thank you.
This has been very enlightening.
Oh wow!
I hope people learned a lot.
Fun.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I hope everyone loves this and listens to your
My podcast.
podcast.
I know. Thank you so much.
Get those streams going.
Dude, I really need to like market the actual podcast. It's the part I care about the least. It's like an audio file. I'm like, oh, where's the video?
Well, it doesn't really matter how it happens, whether it's video or audio, as long as somewhere it's happening, you know?
That's true. That's true. Okay, well, let's cheers with our Starving Artist cups.
Hey.
Oh, yeah, by the way, look at these. These are super cute.
Well, I'm going to show you the other side now.
Better. Thanks for being here, babes.
Thank you.
Yay!